Thank you for listening to Depictions Media Radio. Welcome to Policy and Rights, the show about government policy and human rights. Welcome back to Policy and Rights here in Depictions Media Radio. I'm your host, Michael Clogs. In the next segment, we're going to be hearing about what is going on in Sudan, different factions, and the UN Security Council trying to broker a ceasefire, trying to bring everybody to the table to an agreement that will bring peace to the region. Along with it, there has been a problem in the Sudan, of course. It is one of the hotspots for sexual violence and gender-based sexual violence in that area, where the different factions use rape as a tool to get people to submit to what it is that they want. And of course that is under UN directives and to be considered to be war crimes, and with Sudan being one of the hot spots for the fighting. And of course they're going to talk about things that happen in the DRC, as they're also talking about how to stop the violence against women and children in armed conflicts. So we're going to hear those segments, and we'll also hear some other segments about what is happening with humanitarian efforts from the UN press floor in Gaza. How there during the press conference, there seemed to be some confusion about if commercial trucks are allowed a different routing into Gaza than the humanitarian trucks, if there's a different protocol or what have you for them. And as it turned out, that all the trucks, of course, have to take the same route, and they face the same dangers. Part of the security for the UN humanitarian efforts, especially when they're bringing truckloads of medical supplies and food, is trying to keep people believing that this isn't the last truck forever. And the state of hopelessness that is actually in Gaza at this time, it's reasonable for people to think that I better get mine now, because this could be the last truck forever, and they're left stranded. And that isn't exactly true, but how do you get people to realize? And that is one of the reasons why the World Food Program trucks and other humanitarian effort trucks need so much security, so that they can keep people calm while they deliver the services that are needed. So, and let's move on to other updates. And okay, so Vladimir Putin is making a visit to North Korea as he deepens the anti-West bond with leader Kim Jong-un. It is Putin's first trip to the country in more than 2 decades, and the first time another world leader has been invited into the isolated capital of North Korea since the COVID-19 pandemic. The U.S., South Korea, and other countries have accused North Korea of providing substantial military aid to Russia's war effort in Ukraine, while observers have raised concerns that Moscow may be violating international sanctions to aid Korea's development of its nascent military satellite program. It also comes as tensions remain high on North Korea, on the Korean Peninsula, after Kim Jong-un scrapped a long-standing policy of seeking peaceful reunification with South Korea. Moving forward with updates from CNN, the Biden administration announced an executive action that will shield certain undocumented spouses and children of United States citizens from deportation. The policy will provide legal status and protections for nearly 500,000 American families and roughly 50,000 non-citizen children of immigrants under the age of 21 whose parent is married to a U.S. citizen, and a senior administration official said the move amounts to one of the federal government's biggest relief programs for undocumented immigrants since the DACA program was announced in 2012. The action is aimed at appealing to key Latino constituents in battleground states including Arizona, Nevada, and Georgia. And moving forward to the summer heat from CNN, about 270 million people in the U.S. could see temperatures at or above 90 degrees this week as an intense heat wave ushers the start of the summer on Thursday. Parts of the Midwest to the Northeast could endure the longest heat wave they've seen in decades. The National Weather Service predictions said temperatures on Wednesday and Thursday will be the hottest days of the week for several metropolitan cities. And moving on to LGBTQ plus rights. Thailand will be the first nation in Southeast Asia to legalize same-sex marriage after the kingdom's Senate approved a marriage equality bill, with supporters calling it a momentous step forward for LGBTQ plus rights. The Thailand's Senate voted overwhelmingly in favor of passing the bill, with 130 lawmakers supporting the measure for opposing it. So, updates for today from CNN. And why don't we move forward with statements that were made about Sudan and eliminating sexual and gender-based crimes from being used as war tactics to control people, and we will move forward with that and other statements from the United Nations and the UN Security Council.
I now give the floor to Ms. Martha Pobby.
Mr. President, distinguished members of the Security Council, thank you for convening today's meeting on the situation in the Sudan, a situation which continues to dangerously deteriorate. The persistent engagement of the Security Council is crucial. The warring parties do take note when we act collectively, and we must do more. Despite efforts by the United Nations, its member states, and the regional organizations, we have not succeeded in preventing the escalation of violence in the country, and notably in El Fasher. We are deeply worried that the fighting in and around El Fasher could lead to more mass suffering by the civilian population. There are atrocities along ethnic lines, and we witness the severe consequences of relentless shelling and aerial bombardments in densely populated areas. From 16th April to 9th June, the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights documented at least 192 civilian deaths in El Fasher. Since then, dozens more civilians, including women and children, have reportedly been killed. Civilians are in the line of fire. Nowhere is safe for them. We strongly condemn the attack on the South Hospital in El Fasher, carried out reportedly by the Rapid Support Forces on 8th June, depriving hundreds of thousands of civilians trapped in the city of one of their last remaining lifelines. Mr. President, a ceasefire in El Fasher is needed now to prevent further atrocities, protect critical infrastructure, and alleviate civilian suffering. It could and should also pave the way for a broader-scale cessation of hostilities. The adoption of Resolution 2736 last week is an important signal from this Council that the escalation of the military confrontation must stop and put an end to its deep negative impact on the lives of the people of Sudan. The resolution underlines the well-established responsibility of the warring parties and reiterates the pressing need for them to abide by international humanitarian law. The parties are called to immediately de-escalate the situation in El Fasher and protect civilians throughout the Sudan territory. The parties must heed this call without delay. As requested by the Security Council, the Secretary General will actively develop recommendations to more effectively strengthen the protection of civilians. Mr. President, as the Security Council meets to closely follow the developments on the ground, the fighting between the warring parties continues to rage and is in fact escalating in several other parts of Sudan, including Greater Khartoum, the Kordofan regions, and Gezira State. On 5th June, a horrific attack carried out in the village of Wad al-Nura, Gezira State, allegedly by the Rapid Support Forces, reportedly killed over 100 civilians. Violence against civilians must stop now. No operational justification and even miscalculation would give reason for aiming at civilians under any circumstances. Without swift action, Sudan risks becoming engulfed in more ethnic violence and fragment even further. The risk of a conflict spillover remains high. As the flow of sophisticated weapons continues to fuel the war, all concerned external players should act responsibly and use their leverage over the warring parties to advance peace efforts. Their positive engagement could make a difference to the trajectory of this war and on the magnitude of its human toll. Mr. President, the human rights situation remains appalling. Serious violations of international humanitarian law and human rights law continue to be committed at a large scale. This includes summary executions of civilians and arrest and detention incommunicado of hundreds of individuals in poor conditions, as well as widespread conflict-related sexual violence, predominantly perpetrated by the Rapid Support Forces. We urgently need meaningful actions towards ensuring accountability for these violations. The victims deserve justice. Mr. President, so far, mediation efforts have not secured a ceasefire nor a sustained direct dialogue between the parties. Regrettably, there is no indication that the important discussions held in the context of the Jeddah platform will resume soon. We call on the parties to embrace dialogue, desist from destructive blame games, and seek every opportunity for peace. Mr. President, we cannot afford to be passive bystanders. A negotiated solution remains the only way out of this conflict. The personal envoy of the Secretary General, Mr. Ramtan Lamamra, visited the region in May and early June. He held discussions with General Burhan and other senior commanders of the Sudanese Armed Forces and members of the Sudan Sovereign Council in Port Sudan, as well as with the senior delegation sent to Nairobi by the commander of the Rapid Support Forces, General Dagalo. He urged them to spare civilians during all military operations, whether via land or from the air. He urged them to agree on a local ceasefire in El Fasher, highlighting it is essential to ensure the safety of civilians. He also conveyed the need for an action-oriented meeting of the Humanitarian Forum, chaired by the UN Humanitarian Coordinator, Ms. Clementine Inqueta Salami, to concretely discuss and eliminate impediments to humanitarian access. Meeting with them, the personal envoy registered the commitment of both the Sudanese Armed Forces and the Rapid Support Forces to the Jeddah Declaration of Commitment to Protect Civilians, signed on 11th May 2023. Some fundamental differences between the parties still exist on how to advance the implementation of these commitments. We call on them to display a constructive attitude in charting a way forward. Mr. President, Mr. Lamamra continues to work on advancing a coordinated mediation endeavor, working alongside member states and regional partners, including the African Union, the Intergovernmental Authority on Development, and the League of Arab States, to advance peace efforts. We welcome the Cairo communique resulting from the consultative meeting convened by the League of Arab States on 12 June. The commitment to form a technical working group of the regional and international organizations is an important step. It will facilitate the exchange of views and coordination of diplomatic initiatives. We also extend our gratitude to Djibouti for offering to host next month a retreat for international mediators to be jointly co-sponsored by the concerned multilateral organizations. This retreat will be crucial to revitalize coherent and coordinated peace efforts. It provides the opportunity to agree on shared responsibilities and a unified approach to peace in Sudan. We are also encouraged by the decision of the leadership of the African Union to launch a preparatory process for the convening of a Sudanese civilian political dialogue. The United Nations stands ready to facilitate the provision of a United Nations appropriate contribution. It is critical that civilian voices, especially those of women and youth, are heard. Upholding the promise of the transitional period for a fully credible democratic government remains crucial. We look forward to continuing our work with the African Union High-Level Panel in leading these important efforts with the support and contribution of the other concerned multilateral organizations. Mr. President, it is high time for the warring parties to spare the Sudanese people from further suffering and come to the negotiating table to discuss in good faith. We encourage the parties to fully take advantage of the good offices of Personal Envoy Lamamra to promote constructive interactions which could help them take steps towards a horizon of peace. The plight of the Sudanese people demands our urgent attention and decisive action. The warring parties have the responsibilities to fulfill the aspirations of the people of Sudan and make decisions of historic nature and scope. The people of Sudan deserve no less. Thank you for your
We, the Security Council signatories of the Shared Commitments on Women, Peace and Security, WPS, Ecuador, France, Guyana, Japan, Malta, Sierra Leone, Slovenia, Switzerland, the United Kingdom, the United States of America, and my own country, the Republic of Korea, have gathered here today to voice our concerns on the dire situation for women and girls in Sudan. The prolonged conflict in Sudan has created one of the world's largest humanitarian crises, with millions facing famine and lacking essential health services. The crisis has catastrophic impacts on lives, dignity, and human rights of women and girls. We reiterate the call for an immediate ceasefire across Sudan and full compliance with the arms embargo in accordance with the relevant Security Council resolutions. All warring parties should ensure the protection of civilians and the full, safe, rapid, and unhindered humanitarian access as called for, including at the International Humanitarian Conference held in Paris last April. In light of the International Day for the Elimination of Sexual Violence in Conflict on the 19th of June, we express our strongest condemnation of sexual violence, including when used as a tactic of war, and hereby reaffirm our commitment to supporting survivors and empowering women's participation in peace and security processes. First, we demand that all parties immediately cease all acts of sexual and gender-based violence, including rape, as a tactic of war and targeting women and girls based on ethnicity, and fully commit to preventing and addressing such acts. We welcome the prioritization of these atrocities by the International Criminal Court and the UN fact-finding mission. We reiterate that those who commit violations of international humanitarian law or human rights law or other atrocities are to be held accountable and may be subject to targeted sanctions measures in accordance with the Security Council Resolution 1591. Second, we are committed to supporting a comprehensive, survivor-centered approach. We urge international partners to direct funds to local women-led organizations and programs that assist survivors. We stress the importance of full access of life-saving services, including sexual and reproductive health services, and all attacks on medical workers and facilities must be stopped. Also, we condemn any threats or attacks against women, human rights defenders, and activists, and urge the removal of any restrictions on their work. Finally, we are deeply concerned that despite numerous calls, Sudanese women have been excluded from multiple talks and negotiations since hostilities escalated in April 2023. We demand the full, equal, meaningful, and safe participation of Sudanese women and women's organizations in all political processes, including humanitarian and accountability efforts. We encourage the Secretary General's personal envoy and major regional actors, including the African Union, to support the inclusion of women in peace talks and prioritize gender perspectives in their endeavors. Thank you.
Ambassadors, the RSF and the SAF have not listened to your demand for a localized ceasefire in Al-Fashir. By all accounts, the city could fall quickly, imminently. What are the next steps? How long are you going to wait to act strongly?
In the light of this catastrophic situation in Sudan, the Security Council will remain seized of this important matter and closely monitor how things develop on the ground and engage in serious discussions and take action, appropriate action if necessary. Thank you.
Ambassador, what pressure?
Thank you for your cooperation. I have something to say regarding the Security Council 2736, which for the first time has set at least a benchmark, which is a mild benchmark regarding the denunciation of the RSF, the militia that is destructively launching a war against the Sudanese armed forces, Sudanese people, the elderly, and we have delivered many times evidences, pictures, images, satellite imagery regarding the involvement of the United Arab Emirates in this ugly war and the vicious attacks against the Sudanese civilians, as the RSF is actually and abusively attacking the civilians at the area of production with a view to augmenting the food gap into a full-blown famine. This is in concert with other international and regional actors. Number two, we have found recently the intelligence managed to restore around 6 passports of United Arab Emirates citizens that has been retrieved in Khartoum. They were aiding the elements of the RSF. We have submitted new evidence with these passports to the existing current president of the Security Council, and we ask him to publicize it. And we see up until now it has not been done. And now today, as I mentioned and updated the story and the violations of the RSF, who are receiving regularly massive, mercenaries from southern Libya across Chad and Car to support them. Now they are threatening to attack again Al-Fashir, irrespective of the Security Council operative paragraph. And at the same time, the Sudanese authorities and the Sudan government will cooperate, as we have ascertained, will facilitate the passage and the unencumbered delivery of the humanitarian assistance to all the needy across the Sudan. And we also updated the situation that if the Security Council walk the walk this time by naming and shaming the RSF, they have to walk the extra mile by naming and shaming United Arab Emirates, because it is well known across the world, nationwide across the world, that this is the continuous assistance that is giving aid, supplies, arms, shipments to the RSF and the mercenaries to fight Sudan in order to destroy the current state, with a view to replacing it by their proxies and local surrogates, the RSF. The RSF cannot make a body of government in as much as they are having a kind of developing a kind of new racial terrorism, attacking Sudanese civilians wherever they had gone, or attacked specific cities and towns and villages in Sudan. So I denounce the role of the UAE in supporting viciously, continuously, the RSF military operations against the Sudanese people, and we will refer this file to the ICC to investigate in this. We have set up lots of, or the Sudanese people themselves, lawyers, judges, have set up many forums of legal forums in order to give help and legal aid to the Sudanese and to the victims of the atrocities committed by the RSF, and they will submit as well a file to the ICC. Sudan government have set up also local national legal committees to monitor the crimes committed against humanity from the RSF side. And I am here again to say we are not dealing in lies. We have waited 10 months before we address the Security Council with our file of complaint. During these 10 months, the Sudanese authorities and the Sudanese leadership have regularly contacted regional mediators and mediators in the Middle East and beyond in order to inform the UAE authorities to refrain from going on with supplying their lethal and sophisticated arms, including American arms. They have been provided to the RSF. It means either the provider or the supplier has breached the mutual agreement of this arm contract. So this is in a nutshell. We say UAE continues to support RSF. They are their mentor, regional mentor, and Sudan government is aware of all these vicious machinations, and we will continue. We will continue without any kind of hesitance to try to provide the media with any update in this respect. Thank you very much for your continuous cooperation.
Ambassador, just a couple of follow-up questions. Could you give us a little situational update from El Fasher? We didn't hear too much in your statement about it. What is the situation of the SAF currently, your 6th Infantry Division that's in El Fasher? What's their situation?
As you know, since the last 6 months or before, the RSF are encircled inside El Fasher with the Sudanese citizens trapped there. So it is just lies when you say the Sudanese or SAF has bombarded citizens while they are encircled within. And the encirclement is actually affected by the RSF, including their armament and their, the mercenaries coming from Chad, southern Libya, and beyond, even in the Sahel, from the Sahel. So the situation now, even in the second day on Friday, the RSF has attacked Al Fasher and has killed many citizens in Al Fasher, has destroyed yesterday the southern hospital in Al Fasher, and Sudan government will cooperate with the Security Council vis-a-vis their duties in trying to protect the civilians. They are not actually holding any citizen from leaving the town or the city because they are actually besieged and encircled. But they will escort anybody who wanted to go out from Al Fasher. But actually, it will not desist from defending the city. It will not desist from defending the city until the last soldier, because this is a Sudanese terrain, a Sudanese territory, and we have duty constitutionally to defend Al Fasher, because the RSF wanted again to commit a racial cleansing or an ethnic cleansing. They are targeting specific people from the Zagawa tribe. I have named them, and they have committed it before. They are repeating it again in an ugly scenario. So Sudanese armed forces will defend Al Fasher to the last soldier.
Could I just ask you, at the end of your remarks, you said that U.S. weapons are being used. You're saying that the UAE weapons the UAE has purchased from the US?
Yeah, because actually we delivered this evidence.
Clarify?
We delivered this evidence. I said there are 2 missiles of an American made. This is not an accusation to the U.S., of course. It has been found, and I think we informed the U.S. authorities about it. In this respect, even in the last week when I submitted my supplement to the Security Council, we also placed some images regarding all weapons that we have found or seized from all different make, including Europeans, including beyond, including other countries in the EU and other Asian countries. We have a list of them. But when I say that, there are the military would know specific weapons that is lethal. How did they find their way to the Khartoum? So this is when the Wall Street Journal and New York Times have said it, that they unleashed their investigation against the United Arab Emirates, and they name it. So when the the PR of the UAE, he's attacking me now. He said I'm telling the council lies. I have corroboration. I'm a lawyer. I don't deal or trade in lies. We have corroboration from other actors. We have corroboration from human rights, investigative journalism, and the Congress members who wrote a letter to the UAE authorities and beyond. So we are dead sure that we have a case, we have a good case, we have substantiated it legally, and we will ask the Security Council just to walk the walk and try to name and shame the UAE and to lay pressure on it to stop supplying arms to the RSF.
Could I just ask you one more, since the UAE ambassador kept referring to you as the SAF representative?
Yes.
As opposed to the ambassador of Sudan, one country.
Yes, yes.
What is your reaction to that?
Yes, I think this is a ludicrous kind of characterization. I am recognized here by the Secretary General as the representative of the government of Sudan, not the representative of SAF. I am not a military person. I'm a lawyer. I'm a civilian. And actually, in Sudan, there is no military regime. This regime, the military elements, have been chosen after the revolution, together with the civilian sectors who made the government in the post-revolution. The civilian government resigned, and they came again, and they agreed with the military components, and then the prime minister resigned, and his government resigned accordingly. So they were not dismissed. So we have never seen in the classic coups or the man in the horse when a person makes a coup against himself. Number 2, there is no muzzling of the press. Sudanese people used to shout down to take to the streets, to demonstrate willingly. And there is no muzzling of the press. There is freedom of assembly is being guaranteed even after the war. Until the war went even further after that, maybe state of emergency have been declared when the RSF attacked the citizen areas and the residential areas so that they displaced the citizens for good reason they wanted. Because they get other people from the Sahel who are now occupying the towns, the residents and abodes and facilities in Khartoum and in Durman. So this is one of the things that we said. If the RSF wanted to make peace, they have to remove their occupants, foreign occupants, who are occupying the Sudanese houses and abodes. So calling me as a SAF representative does not augur well, in as much as he is an RSF mentor. He is a vicious RSF mentor because RSF is no longer a governmental body, but a killer. So the machine killer of the RSF is being supported by the RSF, by the representative, by the PR himself, states, with due respect. So I'm not worried by whatever he calls me. I can defend myself well, and I don't feel ashamed to serve my country at this difficult time and at this tragedy being, by attacking Sudanese, not only Sudanese government or its army, attacking even the citizens and the vulnerables. So I have the honor to serve my Sudan in this difficult time, and I don't give a damn for whatever the PR of UAE said of depicting me, of representative of this or that. I am here, the representative. I'm here.
As is normal following a 3-day weekend, I'll have a bunch of notes, so bear with me.
Okay. And we have a bunch of questions, so bear with us.
Okay. That's a fair deal. Okay, good afternoon, everyone. This morning, Izumi Nakamitsu, the head of our Office for Disarmament Affairs, delivered remarks on behalf of the Secretary General at the 4th Conference to review the implementation of the Program of Action on Small Arms and Light Weapons. In the remarks, the Secretary General said the conference arrives at a difficult and dangerous moment for humanity, with global military expenditures on the rise. He added there's nothing small or light about the damage these weapons cause. The new Agenda for Peace recognizes the vital importance of small arms control in preventing conflict and sustaining peace, and makes a number of recommendations to strengthen national, regional, and global arms control efforts on both the supply and demand side. This 4th review conference is a critical opportunity to ensure that these instruments continue to adapt to changing circumstances. The Secretary General calls for bold and action-oriented recommendations that can strengthen this framework, particularly around new and emerging technologies, weapons diversion, gender, and international cooperation and assistance. And tomorrow at 9 a.m., there will be a briefing here by Undersecretary General Nakamitsu, along with Ambassador Maritza Chan Valverde, President-designate of RevCon 4, and Ivor Fung, Chief of the Conventional Arms Branch in the UN Office for Disarmament Affairs, and they will brief you on the 4th review conference that is underway. Turning to the situation in Gaza, the Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs says that displaced families continue to face dire conditions and significant challenges in accessing basic services. Additionally, according to recent assessments led by OCHA and humanitarian partners on the 7th of June, critically low access to water was reported as a key concern. The World Health Organization says that it remains concerned about the escalating health crisis in the occupied Palestinian territory, including the West Bank, where attacks on health infrastructure and increased restrictions on movement are obstructing access to health care. As of the 20th of May, WHO has documented 480 attacks on healthcare in the West Bank since the 7th of October 2023. These include attacks on health infrastructure and ambulances, detention of health workers and patients, obstruction of their access to health facilities, use of force on health workers, and militarized searches of ambulances and staff. Meanwhile, also in the West Bank, the closure of checkpoints, arbitrary obstructions and detentions of health workers, rising insecurity, as well as the siege and closure of entire towns and communities, has made movement within the West Bank increasingly restricted, impeding access to health facilities. And a preliminary assessment released by the UN Environment Program finds that the environmental impacts of the war in Gaza are unprecedented, exposing the community to rapidly growing soil, water, and air pollution, and risks of irreversible damage to its natural ecosystems. UNEP reiterates the call for an immediate ceasefire to protect lives and eventually help mitigate the conflict's environmental impacts. The authors find that resolving immediate and chronic environmental challenges in Gaza is key for its people's health and must be integrated into recovery and reconstruction plans. This morning, briefing the Security Council on the situation in Sudan, Martha Poby, the Assistant Secretary General for Africa, said that we are deeply worried that the fighting in and around El Fasher could lead to more mass suffering by the civilian population, warning that there are atrocities along ethnic lines. She stressed that a ceasefire in El Fasher is needed now to prevent further atrocities, protect critical infrastructure, and alleviate civilian suffering, adding that it could and should also pave the way for a broader-scale cessation of hostilities. Also briefing Council members, Edem Osornu, the Director of Operations and Advocacy in the Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs, said that 14 months of conflict have created a nightmare for civilians in Sudan, with the people of El Fasher at the epicenter today. Amid unrelenting violence and suffering, she warned, the lives of 800,000 people hang in the balance. Ms. Wasorno warned that in addition to the direct toll on civilians, the conflict is also deepening humanitarian needs across the country. She said that almost 5 million people face emergency levels of food insecurity, and over 2 million people in 41 hunger hotspots are at high risk of slipping into catastrophic hunger in the coming weeks. Women report having to watch their children starve because they cannot feed them. Both remarks have been shared with you. Our peacekeeping colleagues in the Democratic Republic of the Congo report that over the weekend, suspected members of a Mai Mai armed group attacked a UN patrol dispatched near Butembo in the North Kivu province, leaving one peacekeeper wounded. The injured peacekeeper was evacuated to Goma for medical treatment and is reportedly in stable condition. The patrol was dispatched in response to recent attacks on civilians by allied democratic forces late last week, in which at least 42 civilians were killed. Meanwhile, in response to recent clashes between the M23 and the Congolese armed forces in Kanyabayongo, also in North Kivu, MONUSCO is continuing joint patrols with the Congolese armed forces to protect the population. These patrols are contributing to restoring a sense of safety, encouraging a small number of residents to cautiously return to the area. Turning to Ukraine, the Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs tells us that attacks and hostilities over the last 4 days across the country continued to cause multiple civilian casualties, including among children. The regions of Donetsk, Kharkiv, and Poltava in the east and the center of the country were particularly affected, with homes and civilian facilities having been damaged, as well as disruptions to the power supply. That's according to the authorities and partners on the ground. Following attack in the Poltava region, humanitarian partners provided psychological support and delivered repair materials reaching more than 200 people. Aid workers also distributed construction materials for emergency repairs to the affected families in the Donetsk, Kharkiv, and Dnipro regions, whose homes were damaged by recent attacks. We have a humanitarian update from Haiti. Yesterday, 2 cargo flights organized through the World Food Program landed in the capital, Port-au-Prince, carrying 55 tons of medicine, shelter, and hygiene materials. These supplies will be used to assist displaced people and to prepare for the hurricane season. WFP's School Meals Program has now distributed some 30 million meals across the country since the start of the current school year. Of these, nearly 17 million meals have been provided through its program that supports local farmers. As we previously said, the education sector has been severely impacted by the recent violence, with more than 200,000 children and 4,000 teachers affected in the West and Artibonite departments. Across the capital, 39 schools have also been transformed into displacement sites and have therefore stopped functioning as schools. Since the 8th of June, UNICEF and the Haitian Education Ministry have started running classes and courses to compensate for missed classes over the past few months across 30 centers in Port-au-Prince. The Deputy Secretary General, Amina Mohammed, is in Paris today. Yesterday, she spoke at the first Transforming Education Summit Stocktake. The Deputy Secretary General said that while some progress has been made since the Transforming Education Summit in September 2022, much more work was needed to address inequalities and provide quality and relevant education for all. She added that there was still an urgent need for increased investments to achieve the 4th Sustainable Development Goal on quality education, and she stressed the importance of prioritizing education meetings with ministers, civil society leaders, and other partners. Ms. Mohammed also held meetings with SDG finance stakeholders, including on issues related to the reform of the international financial architecture. She will return to New York tonight. During the Eid holiday, the UN Special Coordinator for Lebanon, Janine Hennis-Blechert, and the UNIFIL Force Commander, Lieutenant General Aroldo Lazaro, jointly called for all actors along the Blue Line to put down their weapons and commit to a path of peace. Since October, they said, we have seen too many lives lost, families uprooted, and neighborhoods destroyed. They expressed concern about the latest escalation and said that the danger of miscalculation leading to a sudden and wider conflict is very real. And it is with great sadness that we learn of the passing of General Claudio Graziano, who had served as UNIFIL's head of mission and force commander from 2007 to 2010. Our sincere condolences to his family and to the government of Italy. The World Food Program is ramping up its food and nutrition assistance program in West and Central Africa, targeting 7.3 million people during the ongoing June to August lean season. The program supports national governments' lean season response plans in Burkina Faso, Cameroon, the Central African Republic, Chad, Mali, Mauritania, Niger, and Nigeria. WFP says the number of people targeted as part of the program could expand to 12 million people if adequate funding allows. But they say dwindling resources available for humanitarian operations means that despite near record level needs, WFP has been forced to assist fewer people than originally planned. Nearly 55 million people in the region are projected to face acute hunger between now and August. That is 4 times more than 5 years ago. Malnutrition has also reached very high levels, with an estimated 17 million children under 5 acutely malnourished. You can find more information online. Earlier today in Geneva, the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, Volker Turk, opened the 56th session of the Human Rights Council. Presenting his global update, the High Commissioner voiced his dismay at the extent to which warring parties have pushed beyond the boundaries of what is acceptable and legal on many fronts, trampling human rights at their core. We urgently need to find our way back to peace, in line with the UN Charter and international law, Mr. Turk stressed. Later in the day, he also presented his update on the human rights situation in Myanmar. Both statements are online. We have an update from the Development Coordination Office. The Secretary General has appointed new resident coordinators to Georgia and the Gambia, followed by the respective host governments' approval. Didier Trebuch from France started his new function over the weekend as the United Nations resident coordinator in Georgia. He brings more than 24 years of experience in sustainable development, climate change, social cohesion, crisis prevention, and humanitarian action with the United Nations and international organizations. He previously served as the UN resident coordinator for Barbados and the Eastern Caribbean states, covering 10 countries and territories. Carl Friedrich Boll of Haiti is now the resident coordinator in the Gambia. He brings 20 years of extensive experience in development and humanitarian work, having held leadership roles within NGOs across Africa and Latin America. Before joining the UN, he was the resident representative for Plan International in Burkina Faso and Benin. He also served as country director for CARE in Haiti. Their full bios are online. Ahead of World Refugee Day this Thursday, the UN Refugee Agency would like to invite you to 2 exhibits at the UN which highlight the skills and talents that refugees bring to the communities that welcome them. The first is an art exhibit entitled Interwoven, Refugee Murals Across Borders, which is at the UN Visitors Lobby as of today through the end of July. This exhibition presents a collection of murals created through a collaborative process traveling from different locations in refugee camps where refugees and host communities contributed to their creation. The second exhibit is the Made 51 exhibit, which showcases refugee craftsmanship from home decor to accessories and jewelry. You can go see it by the curved wall in the UN Conference Building, and that will be there until Thursday. And staying on the same topic, UNHCR today announced the appointment of the British actor Theo James as its new Global Goodwill Ambassador. Mr. James is a producer and star of dramas like The Gentleman and The White Lotus, and he has been supporting the work of UNHCR since 2016. He has traveled to meet asylum seekers and refugees in Greece, France, and Jordan, and has helped raise awareness of the importance of securing access to mental health services for refugees. And we wish him the best of luck. Today is the International Day for Countering Hate Speech. In a message, the Secretary General notes that hate speech is a marker of discrimination, abuse, violence, conflict, and even crimes against humanity. And we have seen this play out from Nazi Germany to Rwanda, Bosnia, and beyond. He stressed that there's no acceptable level of hate speech. We must all work to eradicate it completely. And today is also Sustainable Gastronomy Day. And last, the Secretary General was saddened to learn of the death of Behrouz Sadri, who served as a valued United Nations senior leader for decades. Mr. Sadri was the Secretary General's deputy special representative in 5 peacekeeping missions from the 1980s through the early 2000s, including the Democratic Republic of the Congo, Sierra Leone, Angola, Mozambique, and Cambodia. For more than 4 decades, he was a trusted colleague and crucial part of UN peacekeeping operations, both at UN headquarters and in the field, and we extend our condolences to his family. Okay, Edie.
Thank you, Farhan. And apologies if I missed this, if this was the first thing you talked about. But on the pause that the Israelis have announced on the road from Kerem Shalom to deliver aid, has any aid actually been going on that road? If so, how much, and has it actually gotten to any Palestinians in need?
Okay, well, first of all, I'd like to say that we do welcome this announcement, but this has yet to translate into more aid reaching people in need. Regarding the road itself, the area between Kerem Shalom and the Salah ad-Din road is very dangerous for humanitarian workers to move goods there. Fighting is not the only reason for being unable to pick up aid, by the way. The lack of any police or rule of law in the area makes it very dangerous to move goods there. But we are ready to engage with all parties to ensure that aid reaches people in Gaza. And we'll continue to work with the authorities and with security forces trying to see what can be done to have security conditions. We do hope that this announcement leads to further concrete measures by Israel to address long-standing issues preventing a meaningful humanitarian response in Gaza.
A couple of follow-ups. Whose responsibility is it to police that area, and are there discussions going on right now?
There are. I mean, obviously, we'd have to see whether there's arrangements that could be made with local authorities on the ground to ensure security. A lot of our security also depends on coordination with the communities. One of the problems, as we've been pointing out in recent weeks, is when aid gets to a place, people are starving and they're worried that this may be the last food that they see. They have to be assured that there's going to be a regular flow of goods so that there's not a panic when we get to the area.
So just to make clear, there actually has been no aid going on that road since the Israeli announcement?
I'm not aware of any aid traveling on that road so far. We are working to get it realized, and we'll try to get moving as soon as we can. Yes, Amelie.
Thanks, Farhan. I have a question on Afghanistan. Over the weekend, the Taliban said that they will participate to the next Doha meeting at the end of June. Can you confirm that they officially accepted the invitation, and did they ask for any condition? Because we heard that there will not be any session with them, with the Afghan civil society. And can you confirm the SG is not going, and who will be representing the UN then?
At this stage, the arrangements for the conference are still ongoing, so I don't have the full details to provide at this stage. You've seen that we had announced the invitation to the Taliban, and we're continuing to work with the various parties. But closer to the date, we'll try to get details about the various arrangements. Mariam?
Thank you, Farhan. You mentioned the Human Rights Council. As you know, today the Special Rapporteur for Afghanistan submitted his report on human rights in Afghanistan. Has she seen that report, and what does he think? And also a second question, Richard Bennett in his speech stressed that the UN and the world, the other countries who are participating in third Doha meeting should not treat the Taliban as a legitimate government. And also he stressed that the world body should support gender apartheid to be recognized as crime against humanity. Will the Secretary General take his advice into account regarding a third Doha meeting, and overall what the Secretary General thinks of gender apartheid campaign that is going on?
Regarding the question of gender apartheid, you'll have seen what the Secretary General, the Deputy Secretary General, who visited Afghanistan last year, and others have said. This is a key concern, and we want to make sure that the rightful role of women in society is respected in Afghanistan as it needs to be everywhere in the world. Regarding the question of the reports, these are reports that are reviewed by the Human Rights Council, so we will leave the matter in the hands of the Human Rights Council. Yeah.
They shouldn't treat the Taliban as a legitimate government. Is the Secretary General going to take that advice from the...
Well, I just want to underscore that we treat them as the de facto authorities on the ground. They are not treated as the recognized government of Afghanistan. Yes.
Thank you, Farhan. My question on refugees, there was a report, an investigative report yesterday on the BBC regarding Greek Coast Guard throwing refugees off board while zip-tied. This is not the first time that such matter arise. And earlier in the year, there were also rumors about collusion between Greece and Italy with regard to sinking refugee ships, coming late after SOS messages or calls from smugglers' boat. Since Greece is a member elect in the Security Council, will the Secretary General be willing to authorize a thorough investigation about these allegations, especially that this time we have still live witnesses for such misbehavior? Thank you.
Well, on this, I'd like to point out that the UN Refugee Agency, UNHCR, has monitored the situation at Greece's borders over the years. They have received numerous reports of incidents of summary forced returns, some of which have reportedly resulted in the loss of human lives. The agency has brought a number of these reports to the attention of the Greek authorities and asked for a full and effective investigation. UNHCR understands that a number of investigations have been initiated by the Greek authorities, but UNHCR has received little information about their progress or outcome. And so UNHCR has been formally asked to submit information pertaining to a number of these investigations. And the Refugee Agency continues to stress the importance of independent and conclusive investigations with results clearly communicated so that any allegations involving human rights violations are thoroughly probed and accountability is established. Deji?
Yes, a follow-up on the Gaza humanitarian aid delivery situation. COGAT reported that yesterday there were 62 commercial trucks entered Gaza. Can the UN confirm that there's commercial trucks, because that's UN has been called for a long time?
We wanted commercial trucks to come in. Obviously, what we need and what World Food Program has been asking for is greater progress and greater travel by commercial trucks, because the problem, particularly in northern Gaza, is although there's now been some commercial traffic coming in, there's not enough so that commercial goods are available at affordable prices.
So my curiosity here is, if the commercial trucks can even enter Gaza, what is the difference between the commercial trucks and the UN-operated trucks?
Well, I mean, there are UN-operated trucks coming in from certain places, but what I can say, in terms of crossing points, as of today, this is the information from the World Food Program, is that the Rafah opening is closed. Kerem Shalom, or Kerem Abu Salam, as you may say, is operating with limited functionality, including because of fighting in the area. The Erez crossing is non-functional, and that's also due to an escalation of fighting in the area. Meanwhile, the West Erez crossing and Zakim, that area is operational, and so goods are coming in that way.
Okay. Two follow-ups. First, on the U.S. pier, do you have any conclusion of the assessment of the security now?
No.
What exactly does the situation of the security that the WFP is an analysis?
Well, it's an analysis by the World Food Program and also by our security people. And the idea is to make sure that there's secure conditions for humanitarian workers to go about their work.
From which? From the self-distribution part, or from that location, the shore and the beach might be used as military operations? Which part?
The question is concerns that arose over the recent weeks about the neutrality and the impartiality, in particular, of humanitarian workers and how that affects their safety. Okay, yes, Yvonne, and then Stefano.
Thanks, Farhan. Going back to your comments about aid deliveries, you mentioned that when the aid gets to some of these communities, they are starving and they need to be reassured that this isn't the last aid delivery they will receive. But presumably that reassurance is impossible to give in the current context. Am I understanding correctly?
It's difficult to give. I mean, ultimately, we need to make sure that there's a more regular flow of aid and more regular flow of aid to all areas. There were times when a few weeks ago, when you had more aid going into the southern part of Gaza, but not to the north. In recent weeks, you've had an improvement in the north, but a drastic deterioration in the south. And so that is why in different areas you see different forms of panic. And it's very reasonable and rational that this is happening if you had a low level but regular level of food coming in and suddenly it stops. So it needs to be something that can happen everywhere. Meanwhile, basic commodities are available in markets in southern and central Gaza, but as I was pointing out, it's unaffordable for many people, and so we need a greater amount of commercial goods coming in so that food can be sold at an affordable price. Stefano?
Thank you. Thank you, Farhan. Italian Foreign Minister Tajani today in the Parliament during a question, he said that the situation in Lebanon with UNIFIL is getting worse every day, and he said that the Italian government asked the UN, even very recently, guarantees from the UN for the Italian over 1,000 soldiers that are there. Can you confirm that the Italian government very recently asked kind of guarantees? I don't know what this means, and what it would be the answer if Italy is very, very concerned about its soldier in the border there.
No, all I can confirm is that we remain in regular dialogue with all of our troop-contributing countries, including with Italy, to reassure them about the basic conditions on the ground. And this is part of a regular dialogue that is part and parcel of the process with which we interact with all of the member states. Iftikhar, and then back to Edie. Iftikhar? Okay, Edie?
Thank you, Farhan. Just to follow up on Deji's question, this is why would commercial trucks feel confident that they could go in using that route and the UN is not confident?
Oh, I'm not talking about that route. I'm talking about the crossings that are safe. We need more crossing points to be safe. We need Rafah to reopen. We need much better conditions at Kerem Abu Shalom. Hopefully, if the fighting subsides, the areas crossing can be restored back to the situation it was in a few days ago. But right now, there's a reduction overall of crossing points that are usable. Deji.
So what you mean is the commercial trucks are not entering Gaza at the same border crossing as the UN-operated deliveries?
No, I mean the crossings that are safe to use for us are safe to use for them.
What sorry?
The crossings that we use, for example, the Zakim crossing, are safe for the commercial trucks as well. The ones that are unsafe for us are unsafe for all trucks.
Yeah, so they didn't enter with the truck you're trying to enter Gaza.
Well, exactly. For example, the Rafah crossing is closed. Period for everyone.
Okay. Couple of other questions. Well, first, we know that last weekend the Prime Minister Netanyahu dissolved the cabinet. Is there any problem for this move for the UN to communicate with all levels in the Israeli government?
We continue to be in touch with our Israeli interlocutors, so our work goes on. As you know, it doesn't have to do with the internal logic of a government.
So, and also another thing is, Prime Minister Netanyahu also on the video said that Mr. Blinken told him that the U.S. will remove its limitation on weapon deliveries. Do you worry that would even put the conflict up? Well, let's say in Gaza as well as in northern border, even worse.
Our concern about all armed activities is on the record, and that continues. But we wouldn't have any specific comment about dialogue between the U.S. and Israel. And with that, I wish you good afternoon.
Okay, final thoughts. War of itself is bad enough. The one thing that we don't need to see continually happening is rape and gender-based violence that is, rather is aimed to control people or not, we need to put an end to such types of violence. It is all based in hate, and we need to relieve the hate from our human society so that we can move forward as a species and find a way of doing so in loving and caring ways. Finding ways to end conflicts without violence, and find ways of setting aside greed and taking up real security that does not involve thinking that if I don't take it from him, he will take it from me. So, thank you for listening today. You've been listening to Policy and Rights here on Depictions Media Radio. I've been your host, Michael Clogs, and please subscribe and support us as we try to spread a loving message about human rights and the policies that go along with them. This show has been produced by Depictions Media. Please contact us at depictions.media for more information.